As a teacher, there are certain students you get who you can predict with a certain degree of confidence about where they'll land in terms of profession. I mean, if you have a student who's really into math and science, you can say, well, you'll probably land over here. If you have a student who's always reading and enjoys writing, you can predict, oh, you're going to land over here. But when it comes to predicting who's going to deal with life the best, and what I mean by that is who's going to deal with life when roadblocks are thrown their way, when obstacles are thrown their way, when life just doesn't work out and it becomes difficult. That's a tough one to predict, and it's something I'd rarely do. But if somebody came to me and said, of all the students you ever had, who do you think could answer the questions when life asks them? The answer is Paul Brock, a young man I met in 1996 in New Orleans, Louisiana. Paul Brock, who was in 8th grade, and he was in my 4th period class. I do actually remember that. So, Paul, I want to just get into your background a little bit. You are from, well, I'll just go ahead. Where were you born? Where were you raised? And can you tell me, just give me a snapshot of before I met you?
Okay, sure. So I was born and raised, I was born in New Orleans, Central City to be specific, um, and um, uh, uh, came from a broken family, unfortunately. And so during,
Wait, what? Hold on a second. What does that mean?
okay, so my mother and father eventually split up at some point when I was a kid. And so from that point on, I lived with my mom during the school months. And during the summer, I would go to Violet, Louisiana, and be with my father's side of the family in the summer months.
Where did you grow up? Where were you living?
So where you came to visit us is where I grew up, my
Okay.
entire childhood. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
which
Now,
was,
go
should I
ahead.
get into the name? So it was called the Calliope Projects,
Yes.
and it was a housing development property.
Right.
So
So it
yeah,
was a housing project.
HUD, under
Okay.
HUD, I
Yes.
believe. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, it was. In fact, the joke was for me at when I was teaching at Thurgood Marshall, when I would visit you and go down, and there was a few occasions of playing basketball, or sometimes when I had dropped off when you were doing artwork for my one of my education books. I told the students on Monday that I was well received in the Callio and I was known as King of the Callio. King of the Callio. And the
Yeah.
and as you can
Uh,
imagine, the students from New Orleans who knew of the Callio were looking at me. I was like, "Oh yeah, I was down there this weekend." And I was like, I was well received.
I
And
just have to laugh. That was funny.
be,
Yeah.
because when I went down there the first time, and I don't know if I dropped you off. I don't remember, but I walked back to the car, so I was alone, and in my old Toyota Celica. And there were, I don't know, 7 or 8 kids, and they ranged from, say, 5 to 9. And the one thing for my audience, my worldwide audience, if you don't know about New Orleans, it can be very segregated. And where Paul was living, it was all black. Where I was teaching, all the students were black, except in 3 years I had 2 white students. So just so you understand, there is I guess you'd call it self-imposed segregation of race. And so when I was down in the Callio, I stood out. And there were these boys who weren't too familiar with seeing a white guy, but then they were clear about how they felt about it. And they,
Yeah.
I saw one of the older boys who was maybe 7, 8, 9, whisper to a 5-year-old something, and then they gave him the basketball. And this kid ran up to me, and I thought maybe he wants to play ball, and he threw it at me, and he said, "Get out of here, Whitey." And that was my introduction to the Calliope from your neighbors.
First of all, let me go back before that.
Okay.
When I walked, so every year we're giving our teachers, we go into our class and we meet our teachers, and you know, our teachers are, you could get any particular race, white, black, and and so um, when I walked into your class and I met you for the first time, because some of these teachers you see year in and year out if you're in the school, and you were a
Right.
new teacher to me and to most of
I
my
had just been
classmates.
hired 2 weeks before. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So you were a new teacher. So keep that in mind because, teachers, they have reputations after they have history, And
Right.
so after I got in your class, my first, and I was in it for a few classes, my first impression was, all right, he's cool. He's like a little, almost a little above Bill Nye the Science Guy. So I don't know if that's a compliment or, you were to me.
Right.
And then as class went on, and all of my classmates and all the 12, 13, and 14 and the new hormones was going, I was like, man, this guy, he's cool, but man, he's patient with some of these knothead kids, man. So my first impression was that you were someone that was uh, patient and you tried your best to stick to the curriculum, in spite of some of my classmates and the craziness. And and then, you seemed like you had a lot of ideas and things you wanted to do. So this was my first impression of you. And then, few classes went along and you came to me and you asked, hey, I hear you're in because there's I think they call it a gifted in the arts class in
Oh,
the
right.
in the
Right.
school itself.
Right.
You're in the gifted and you. I was like, yes, 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 I am, and came to me with the proposition, and it started from there, and we began to
Okay.
engage, and so we were communicating, but when you showed up at my house, I was like, this dude is either super naive or he's crazy because he has no idea where he's at.
Talk about the Calliope and the project that you grew up in.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know the full beginning or history
Okay.
uh,
Yeah, I'm just asking
of,
your own
of
personal experience.
okay. So one, this was governmental money that built these projects, and
R-
Calliope was one of many in New Orleans.
yes.
And it was, and the Calliope, like the others, are comprised of uh, the, many four, sometimes five, six-story buildings in it.
Yes.
The building I lived in was 4 stories, and it housed a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so they were complexes, like a so the project itself was, I would say, about 4 or 5 maybe miles around. So it's a huge development,
Yeah.
and it housed the poor, uh, lower class, people who either they didn't have a job um,
They got paid
or
very little for the job
or
they
they
did
got paid
have.
very little. So the demographics was everybody around was black, and maybe you saw one or two white people here and there, but it was
I
mainly
did not.
African
I did
American and
not.
black people.
Right.
My father, now I do know of one family that was, they said they were white, but they were more like light skinned, and somehow they were my distant cousins. They're about the only ones, but everybody was black, and it's hundreds of people there.
Right.
And so we lived up on the third floor, and then the fourth floor or fourth story, we lived in a four-story building, and uh, we lived up on the third floor. So we will have to walk up three landings of stairs to get to our apartment where we lived. And it's a two-bedroom apartment. These buildings were regular bricks, the small ones on the outside, and then the huge ones on the inside. And so when you went
Hmm.
inside, the walls were made of the big concrete bricks. So these were brick buildings, um, two-story home. Uh, as a kid, I thought maybe this apartment was big, but no, it wasn't big. Maybe, who knows? Could have been 800, 700 square feet. I would say that it was a little bit of a rough environment. Uh, I had to walk to school every day. Most of the kids that lived in the projects walked to the school that was a block away. Savannah F. Williams was the school, and it's still
Okay. I didn't
there.
know where you went. Okay.
Yeah, so we walked to school every day. So, uh, and on the way to going to and fro from school, you'd see a lot happen, you know, um, whether it's fights or parties, or because this is a lot of people in one area, you know,
Yeah.
and so
Yes.
there's usually something going on.
Yeah.
Um,
It was.
uh, and, some of the kids were like me, the fathers weren't in the home, uh, and a lot of single moms. And they also had some full families in there as well with mom and
Right.
dad. But it seemed like the single moms, from what I can remember, outnumbered everything else. It was the hood, as some people would say it, but we didn't look at ourselves as this is the hood. We were like, this is the projects. Because the
Right.
hood, at least, they got their own houses. We don't have houses here. This is the projects.
Right.
This is a big project. We're trying to figure something out here.
Right. Do not mislabel us as the hood, where there are no houses.
A little less than the hood.
Yeah.
The hood. We were trying to
There's the
get to the
hood,
hood.
and then there's the project. Where, yeah, you're right. We want to advance towards. We see
And
the hood,
later
and that's
on,
what we're aiming for. That's what we're
yeah,
aiming for.
yeah, we trying to work our way down to the house. We're up here, third floor.
When you were in elementary school, did were you able to avoid conflict, or how was that for you? Because I only knew you in eighth grade. I
Right.
mean, that's when I was
So
first introduced to you.
yeah, so I can tell you that the environment and those kids were. Uh, I was not 100% in my own skin and comfortable in my own skin and comfortable in my environment with the kids that I grew up around. But I would say, just to compare, it was a little more aggressive. It didn't take much for kids to just start picking with you or picking on you,
Right.
whether it be your shoes. And you don't have to do anything. You
Oh
just, I
yeah.
don't know.
Heck,
Yeah,
that
you don't
even
have to do
happened at
anything.
third grade. That even happened at third grade Marshall.
Yeah, yeah, you don't. I don't know. Maybe it's still like that, but you didn't have to do anything to start getting picked on.
Right.
Maybe it's still like that. But
Yeah, they were
and
looking for
so
something to start. They were
yeah,
looking for a
yeah.
reaction.
So there was that, and then we would go to school with some of the school, and on our way to school, I mean, like I said, you'd see a lot. I mean, I remember a few times, we'd be on our way to school, and you'd see a dead body over there covered in white sheet, another shooting. Um, you'd hear shots. You know, we all knew to duck, but it was a concrete building, so but just don't stand next to a window. Just duck.
But what was the advice your mom was giving you? And before you answer that, I should say that when my impression was when I showed up was that here was a mom who made sure that her kids went to this magnet school, which took effort, and you had to go do stuff to make sure that happened. And she seemed to, my impression was that your mom was somewhere along the line, it was clear that you're not to be hanging out with troublemakers. Now, was that just, am I, now, I've never actually asked you that, but that was always what that's, your mom had a presence, and so it was.
Yeah,
I mean, I look at you, and I could look at you and Carl and Paula, and it was that my kids are going somewhere. That's
yeah,
the impression that we got, which I'm not wrong about. I know that part I'm not wrong about, but what message being raised during the school year by a single mom, and again, I want to say a shout out to single moms for raising their kids well. There's another podcast that I say that on.
yeah,
And what was the message your mom was giving you when you were younger, then as you got older, and all those things? Because I meet you when you're 13 or 14.
hmm So first, let me say, my mom has a lot of fortitude, and 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 she had a lot of fortitude back then. Um, the things that I mentioned were just a few of the things that she also had to endure. You know,
Okay.
especially what raising two boys
Mm-hmm.
um, and a girl um, by herself. In an environment where there's not much support. And there's not much guidance, and there's not a lot that was given to her to say, hey, go in this direction per se. I don't think she had any mentors herself. Um, but um, she's someone who stood by what she knew to be right, and
Mm-hmm.
and she communicated that to us. We came up in a hard environment,
Right.
so uh, it
Well,
it
that that
also
that
drove us.
you that I, if I can interject, that when the challenges are there, if you're able to, in such an environment, take on the challenges, and there were a lot, and you're
Mhm.
able to work through those, you'll get stronger. And there are a lot of forces in those environments where it's difficult not to stray because
Yeah,
there's a number of kids going, now let's do this, and let's just, here's some immediate gratification if we go do this. But that's what I could appreciate when I met you guys as middle school, two middle school boys and a soon to be middle school girl, that it was obvious that your mom was taking care of business. I'll just put
yeah,
it
oh
that
yeah,
way.
and we couldn't be impulsive. Uh, and I mean, as far as how we responded to things, and we responded to our environment, and we responded to people.
Now,
Yeah,
so you end up going, so your mom went and just applied for you to go to Thurgood Marshall?
yeah. So um, once I was in sixth grade, because elementary
Hmm.
went up to sixth grade and when I
Right.
was young,
Right.
and then middle school was seventh and eighth, and then you went on
Right.
to senior high. Now they're doing some different stuff, but I had good grades, and so I always overheard my mom talking about magnet schools and getting us into a school where because um, the consensus was that from what I can hear from my mother talking to friends and stuff was that we have to put our kids in a good school away
Right.
from all the kids that are causing trouble,
Right.
and so she pursued that, and also the principal, which later I found out was the grandfather of one of my friends in high school later on. The principal also uh, said, "Hey, there's this school over here that you can try and pursue to get in." For all the kids that came out of his school that had good grades and were good kids, he was also looking out for for those kids, and
Right.
so that principal and also the staff that was looking out for good kids with good grades also informed the parents of, hey, there's this school over here. So the parents and the staff at the school were informing parents.
There weren't a lot of options if you wanted to get a decent education in New Orleans. So you really had to make sure you were on this particular track. You went to
Correct.
McDonough, you went to McDonough 35, and then I don't think you got to do it in your freshman year, just but I think NOCCA began your sophomore year. Is that correct? The New Orleans for Creative Arts School. I'm not really certain. Okay.
When you keep saying magnet school, is that we're talking about a whole city, and there are people even outside the city. These kids are having to catch the public bus. We did not have school
Oh, yeah.
buses.
Yes.
That in
Yes.
itself created a lot, and it was even more of a hurdle because
Mhm.
we had to wear uniforms. And when
Oh,
schools
yes.
would rival with each other, you get jumped because you got on the wrong uniform on a
Right.
public bus.
Right.
And so these kids are coming from around the entire region to this Thurgood Marshall Magnet School, to this McDonald 35 High School. They're coming from around the whole region. My kid now, he goes to the school that's close to his house. And all the
Right.
kids in this that are around the school go to that school. And the school
Right.
across town, all the kids that stay in near that school go to that school. It wasn't like that for us. We had to
Right.
get on a we had to take one we had to know how what bus to catch, like take being in New York and taking the subway to this subway to that subway to get way over here. So we had to
Right.
do that as kids. I don't want to miss that. So we had to travel on the regular bus with regular citizens, you know, people going to work every day and other school kids that will cause trouble. And so to get to school, to this magnet school,
Right.
all the kids throughout the entire region had to do that for middle school, had to do it for high school. And with NOCCA, a bus would come to McDonald 35, pick up the McDonald 35 kids, go to Warren Easton, pick up the Warren Easton kids, go to Ben Franklin, pick up the Ben. And so all of us would be, that's the only time we would see a school bus. That was the only time. And then they would take
Okay.
us all to NOCCA. NOCCA is a famous school. It's like School of Juilliard in New York,
Right.
except it's really famous with the colleges.
Right.
And all the big colleges would come to NOCCA. They would send a representative and they would present and they would say what you get and all these things. And we would all talk to each other. Hey, where are you going? Where are you going? Where are you going? And it was like I don't know how much I don't know this school. Gosh, it's a free school. You get into it and your education is free because they have such a high success rate that the alumni get out, they do well, and then they pay they pay into the school.
Right.
That was the top school. That's in New York. And then second was Pratt Institute. And then the third was another, all three were in New York.
Right.
And I would
I
say
think
like
you're.
80
I
to,
think you're. Oh, sorry. I think you're referring. The first one might be Cooper Union, but I could be wrong.
correct. That's it. Cooper Union. Yep. Cooper Union is the number one school everybody wanted to get into because it was free. It was free. You
Right.
get in, you don't got to worry about anything. And you touched on, I didn't want to stay in state. If you have a certain GPA, you can go to Louisiana State University. Everybody knows LSU. It's a nationally known, mainly because of football and baseball
Right.
and the other sports. But I didn't want to go to LSU because one, I've always, New Orleans is such a microcosm where you could kind of think it's the only thing there. And you hear about other things, and very few people would leave and get out. I had a history where people didn't make it to my age. And you have this desire to get out, because Louisiana, other than where you took me to Mississippi, we never left the state. Pratt came in, they accepted me, and I had a scholarship. And I had
Okay.
multiple scholarships. One of them
Okay.
was for being, I don't know what they call it, for poor people.
For
It was
being
like a
poor.
poor people scholarship. Yeah, for being poor. Like,
Well done. You have
I
no
shouldn't say it
money.
like
We're
that.
going to give you some.
Uh, Later, I worked in the graduate office, and I had to do the filing for this lady, and I don't know if I should say this on video,
I
but
can always edit it
some
out.
paper. Okay, some
Huh?
papers filled out, and I could see the demographics of the classes of this is what the median the students that go here. Here's the median income household,
Right.
200,000. And I saw that they had all of them there, and I was the one at the bottom with the between 10,000 to 30,000 a year, and so they accepted me based on that merit. Architects have to be able to do the math on calculating the loads on the members of a building or a bridge or anything they construct. They have to know how to calculate each load on the member so that we know the thing don't fall. Even though the architects don't do that, they just give it to a structural engineer.
Right. That's what I was
We
going to
have to
say.
know how to do it. Yeah,
Right.
we have
Okay.
to still know how to do it ourselves.
Right.
That class kicked my butt. That class is called Statistics and Structure, Statics and Structure, something like that. Took it 3 times. It
I
sank
think
my GPA. Yeah.
I think a friend of mine, I think that he was in an engineering program and took statics, and I said that's where he ended up. It got to a point that he ended up changing his major. So I don't think you're the first
Yeah.
person
It
that's
was,
happened to.
oh, it's crazy. I can do bridges. I can do simple structures. Got it. But you gotta be able to do it all. And that I took that class 3 times. I failed it. It brought down my GPA, and I lost all of my scholarships. It's the only
Right.
class I failed, and that's what. And so I lost my scholarships. So it's either I take out 60 grand a year in loans for the next 2 years, or I just
Right.
accept this what looked like defeat.
You grow up born and raised in New Orleans. You grow up in the neighborhood where the same in the Calliope, the projects where I was when I was introduced to you, you were living there. In elementary school, it was incredibly demanding. You said it was aggressive. Fights would break out quite easily. It was a dangerous area as far as violence. You said that it wasn't unheard of to see a dead body on the way to school. I'm just quoting you. I want to make sure I'm not exaggerating anything. But your mom kept you on the straight and narrow, firm hand, firm expectations. firmly rooted in religion, making sure that there was prayers every day, got you to, and then with the help of your principal, your teachers, and your mom. I mean, letting your mom know, alerting her that, hey, Paul should go to a magnet school. You go to Thurgood Marshall Magnet School, as your brother and sister did. You go to McDonough 35, a magnet school. Then your sophomore year, which is the year you can start NOCCA, the Creative Arts School, you go there. So you're doing both of those. It's a nationally recognized program. And then you go to Pratt. You're there in New York City, and then after 3 years, you are no longer funded to go there, and you've been in an architecture program. So you had this trajectory of you were in the projects and with dealing with the challenges of that environment, and you were on your way up, and you're getting out of that situation. And you are. I don't mean to suggest that once you leave Pratt that you have to return or anything. But what's that like? So you get to this point, and you're 2 years away. What psychologically, what was that like for you?
It was, in life we hit a lot of points where you know certain things crush our expectations and our dreams, and um, that was a time. I think that was the first time I felt. Um, I've always had this sort of uh, I, this. I don't think aggression is the right word, but this ambitious sort of energy and focus towards where I'm going and what I'm going to accomplish in life. And that was the first time I hit a major roadblock that really challenged my confidence, really challenged uh it messed with my faith, you know, not God faith necessarily, but when you believe something, it really messed with that. It was the first time I've dealt with major things, but this was the first time I've dealt with something of this magnitude psychologically,
Right.
because it meant that it meant it was the first time I had to accept that, you know, before this point, I've always had this hope. And this is the first time I was this hopeless. And
Right.
and I was alone, and I didn't, have anything to grip on. I didn't have uh, no coattails to pull on. Uh, I didn't have a clue of what the next step was going to be. Okay, so I called my mom. I let her know, hey, I'm coming back home. I was completely crushed that I'm not going to be this architect. I'm the first one out and the first one that's going to try and get it done.
Right.
Because my brother's behind me, my sister's coming behind me with college and everything, and you want to set the example. And so it was this failure, this defeat. And I called her, told her, hey, I'm coming back home.
Right.
My brother, he didn't join the army until much later, but so
Okay.
he went to an art school in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
And so when I came back that summer, he also came back. And during that time, we were beaten down and just trying to figure it out because now we had to come up with something new and a new plan. And
Right.
so, um,
And I know it's coming around the
we
corner now.
yeah, so we were coming up with our new plan, and yeah, Meteorologist comes on. He's like, "You better get your hatchets." I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" We never heard a meteorologist say this before. How to get a hatchet?
Right. The hurricane has hit. People have lost their homes. Why did it feel in the Superdome that the walls were closing in and you didn't think you were going to just survive the Superdome experience?
Okay, so there's a few things. Um, we went in there and it was more comfortable than being outside, and they were
Right.
giving us those army ration meals in the bag 3 times a day.
Right.
And everybody was comfortable, and things were feeling like a shelter, you know.
Right.
And I'll just fast forward to the last day where they didn't have no food, and they
Okay.
had to take what water they had left and put it on the field so that it didn't get, it didn't get just taken. Everybody could see it.
Oh, the field in the
Uh,
Superdome. Sorry.
in the
Yeah.
Superdome.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had the food up here. They had different stations. It was great. They went from that to things are getting crazy. We need to put all the food here because people are stealing, people are fighting, things are getting crazy. The armies, the National Guard need to protect, and we only have so much water. We're just going to give 1 bottle, 2 bottles a day. They weren't allowing us to leave. And I don't want to get too much into it, but yeah, it went from that to that. They get the bus, then put them in hotels. They figured that out. That's the first time I saw that, and now it's like, oh, they're doing it with now. We ended up in a hotel. The manager there put us on the news. Said, hey, I got 2 refugees, 2 evacuees out here over here. Because there weren't many of us in
Right.
Oklahoma, but they could see all the deal on national TV. And they're like, hey, we got 2 here. You want to interview them because these are the first 2. I don't know, and so there's the news and the cameras, and sure enough, that helps me get a job. An architecture firm calls me in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I told the manager, yeah, I'm looking for a job, and we said it on the news story, look for a job, and so they said, hey, we got an architecture firm that's willing to hire you, and so that's where so when you don't become an architect, you become a helper of the architect, and that
Right.
is a draftsman.
But now you're working in the field that you would have actually been in had you
Yeah.
completed the degree. How is that on you? And what are you thinking? And what are you going through? What are the struggles and challenges that you're dealing with?
Okay. So first, um, from the time that I had to accept that I did not complete my 5 year to get my bachelor's, from that point on, I've always had with me that struggle of I was kind of in limbo of I didn't get there, but then I didn't really have a second, I didn't have a plan B as far as what I want to be.
Right.
And so I've always so when I got the job as a draftsman, I still was in a place, mentally and psychologically, I still had this internal battle about stepping back up to try again. But I looked up. I was going to work one day, and I looked up at the building, and I'm like, what is this place, Tulsa, Oklahoma? I have never heard of it. Like, I watch TV, I look at sports teams. I've heard of Portland, Oregon. I have never heard of Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I'm looking up, I'm like, where is it? What is this place? So I'm kind of all over the place. I'm in this new place. I don't know how it's gonna go. I don't know if I'm gonna try and go back home one day. I just know my sister is here. My mom is in Texas. My dad is in some other Michigan. Like my immediate my family I came from was completely scattered.
Right.
And then I was still struggling with trying to navigate not having a plan B
Right.
and not having, again, a coattail, just like my mom, a coattail to pull on, or I didn't have a mentor per se. I didn't have someone I could talk to about how do I navigate what I'm going through. I was just in this place where I got to get a job now and I got to start my life here in this way.
Right.
And underneath all that, I'm still struggling with whether or not I need to try and go back because I still have 3 years. That's a
Yeah.
3 years is a chunk of five. But
Right.
now I'm in a different state and I also have debt that I owe to the school. And then
Right.
I think, at least that's what they told me. And then I have my student loans. And so I have to start paying that. So I have to
Right.
get to work. Like none of the hard things in life is going to wait for you. You just have to deal with it the best way you can. So I had a cousin who's a truck driver who, while I was a draftsman for the 15 years, hey man, you should become a truck driver. You'll like it. Uh, 15 years, that's a lot of years. So I had a lot of
Right.
experience there. But one of the inherent problems that I had, it's not like this for all draftsmen, but there's a problem when you're done building something. There's no more work. So
Yeah.
I was tired of getting laid off. I'm like, hey man, get another building lined up or something, keep me busy for 3 years, and then we gotta lay you off because the company's slow. Go to another company. They
Right.
build whatever portfolio of things they have that keeps you busy for 2 years, and then they have to lay you off, and then you go to another company. They have maybe 5 years of work in it. And so after being laid off so many times, and during that time as well, I think uh, I also had to, you get this anxiety as a young man about, for keeping a job and you know and your security becomes the job. And during that time, that was broken off of me. That the job is not my security.
When you're married, then you have your fiance had a son. You're married, and so he's moving in with you. Your son, and then you're going to be raising him, and then you have another son who you're raising, and you've been in the business of draftsman for a while, and you have this opportunity to go into the job market with truck driving where it's in high demand. How much did the family and the responsibility of the family play into that?
Huge, because at that point, my dreams were no longer the priority. Taking
Right.
care of my family became the priority. My dreams just had to take a back seat.
That you know that you have a family, and this is my responsibility as the dad to make sure I have a stable job and I'm going to be providing, and that is the priority now. And so
Yeah,
when you accepted that, how did that how did that change the dial on your confidence or just your outlook on life or getting up in the morning? Can you speak to that?
yeah. So I think that it boosted me into. Um, it was more than just my priorities are second to my family. It was, I began to have even more curiosity about what comes next. Because now I have a family. Now I'm seeking to try and do something that I haven't seen in my personal life.
Okay.
I you know, um, that's have a family, stay married, and raise kids, and try and do your best at it. And
Right.
so I knew that there were some things that I didn't know because
Which is a constant in life.
The further down I get, the more curious I get, and so
Right. Well, I mean, it is the thing. The wise man is the person who realizes that the older they get, the less they recognize as each year goes by, they recognize how little they know, and every year you realize how little you know. So,
yeah, and so I knew
anyway.
that. Yes, I knew that. Okay, now, boy, I have to have a. I, I. It's not just having a plan for me anymore. Now I have to have a plan for my entire family, and there's some things that I project as an individual, but now I have to project as a family, and there's more of a machine now. It was just me before. There's a lot of machine up here, just all in there. That's a lot going on. But
Right.
now this is even bigger machine. And
Right.
so there's a lot more learning I have to do. And there's a lot more growing I have to do. And there's a lot more humbling things I have to do. You know why I'm laughing. You
Well,
understand.
I do. I do. Yeah.
There, so it opened me up to like, there's a lot more that I have to take in now than where I was before because this thing just kicked up a notch. It kicked up to another level. And in order to heed that call, um, I need to move differently. I cannot keep doing what I did because that was only going to be suitable for me. I thought I had vision when I was single. When you get a family, yeah, that vision got to be bigger. You
When you got when you have people depending on you, I mean, there's different
yeah,
motivations,
yes,
and I do want to say this that when you have now, I only have one son. I mean, I only have one child, but it
yeah.
does when you have somebody depending on you. When you go do the stuff that you need to do, and you're there for them, and you're showing up
Hmm.
for them, it is a rewarding thing. It takes work.
Yeah.
But that I want to be clear that, and I'm certain you'll agree with this, that it is incredibly gratifying. It's incredibly
Yes.
gratifying to grow up and take on responsibility and say, I'm going to be a man and I got to do
Yeah.
this.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not
And
saying, but that it does have its rewards. I mean, let's hope so,
mhm.
or else it'd be nothing but a frustrating ordeal. I mean, but taking that
Yes.
on,
And one of those
so
and one of those things you learn is as you say that is the short sightedness as a single man growing family like things become long term.
you had
Okay.
said a few days ago, as we were arranging a time for the podcast, that yeah, I'm doing the truck driving now, and something to the fact that I don't know if I'm supposed to be a truck driver. And
Yes.
what do you mean by that? Because I know that you had dreams of being an architect, and I know that you've spent time being a draftsman, and it's time to take care of the family, and you needed a stable job, and so you're a truck driver now. But what do you mean that I don't know if I'm meant to be a truck driver? And to before you even answer, I'm not allowing you to answer, which is great of me. Is I My
Hello?
thought was, well, you're not. You're a father. You're a husband. You're so many things, and this is one thing you do. But go ahead, and if you could speak to that, what you had said. What did you mean by it?
Okay. You went out again, so I don't know if I missed anything. I caught the very beginning and the very end. Um
Let's see what you come up with. Maybe that's the best way for you to hear me.
like a game show.
Right, right.
Well, so uh if I was to juxtapose what you were asking me earlier about uh, my dreams and the ambition that I had
Uh huh.
to where I was at that moment when I was sharing it with you, you'd see that what I'm supposed to be seemed like it has less importance um, to uh, at least how my life is functioning now.
Right.
Um, um, I know that part of development, at least how I see it, part of part of my development is knowing who I am and then how I can contribute to others.
Okay, I'm going to now. We'll have
Oh, you didn't let me
there.
explain what happened with Facebook, just so you know.
Wait,
Why it took me
okay,
so
okay.
long.
I'm not saying you won't. Let me, but I am going to tell. I do want to tell this one story. I don't remember how it happened, but I saw this church and I had walked by that church and there was in New Orleans and there was a choir and it was rocking, right? And I'm a big music lover. I'm Catholic. We go to church. It's okay. Anyway, I mean, I don't go anymore, but I have thought about returning. As you get older, you go and you investigate some of your beliefs and all those kinds of things, and you're looking for things. All right. But anyway, I don't know how it happened, but somehow I discovered that you went to that church, that same church. Was it on Canal Street? Is that correct? No, not Canal.
Uh,
It
it was
the one with
Washington,
the
Louisiana or Washington. It was the one with the streetcar that
yeah,
goes
the one
down
with the
there.
streetcar, the one with the streetcar. So,
Yeah,
yeah. So anyway,
or
I
trolley. Some
discovered
people out there calls it trolley. Yeah.
okay. So out there I discovered that you went to this church that I was in awe of and I
Hmm.
said, could I go to church with you? And I believe what happened was after I talked to you, and of course you had my telephone number, and your mom called me up and said, Paul has indicated to me that you would like to go to church. And I said, yes, Denise and I would very much like to go. And so we arranged that we would come and pick you up, which I was thinking about the other day because it was just this two-door Celica, and it would have been your mom, Denise, and you and your sister and your brother. So anyway, we picked you up and we got on our duds. I picked you guys up and you were in your church going clothes. And we go in and there's music going, and then from the get-go the music, which I thought was the only music, but then the choir came in. I think they were wearing white robes. I mean, it was amazing. And I don't mean to take away from the religious aspect, but if you
Hmm.
hadn't been to one of these churches before, you're just going, wow.
Yeah.
And anyway, and so things are going on. Now, the preacher then gives his sermon. He gives his sermon, and then he comes out. He drops down from up above or wherever he walks down from. And there was I don't really remember how it got to this, and I don't exactly know the words, but he says there are something to the effect that there are some people today who need to declare their love for Jesus or declare that they want to be saved. There was some sort of declaration, something that you had to get up before, with the preacher, and he says, who wants to do it? Who's going to come? And he starts looking, and I'm not lying here. He looks over at us saying, who's going to do it? And that's when I wasn't thinking about it before. I'm going, there's Denise and Denise and I are two of the three white people in the whole church. And this church is packed. Everybody's
Oh my
dressed really
goodness.
nicely. You got the choir. The choir's up above. I feel like they're looking at us. And you got the other white person, but the other white person clearly looks like she goes every week. So she's actually declared her acceptance of Jesus. So he's not even looking at this white person because I remember Whitey's over there too, man. Come on, give her a look. And I didn't realize I I didn't
Yeah.
realize till I came to Ireland. Till I moved to
Chicho.
Ireland how shy Irish people are about putting themselves up front and center. So where at least I'm a bit
Yeah.
of a showboat and I could kind of deal with it. It was only after I went to Ireland that I could really appreciate what Denise must have been going through, because he's looking. He's just, who's going to be saved? Who's going to bring Jesus in the heart? And it was just over and over. And I'm looking around and I'm pretty certain everybody's checking us out. And I'm trying to just, no, not. And I'm telling you, I was just going, maybe not today though. This is just my
And
first time. Let me just enjoy the choir. And
felt like he wasn't gonna stop until you got it.
no, I mean, fortunately for us,
Oh man.
I don't know if I said a prayer then, but I said, please, somebody, take the preacher's eyes away from us. And somebody got up and said, I'm going to take, and I'm certain the preacher's going, but I'm not done with the white couple over there. Anyway, well, I'm going to just say it has been an absolute delight to have Mr. Paul Brock
Oh man.
on a Future for Fellas podcast. And I have no doubt that I'm going to have
Same
him
here.
on again. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and just being open and talking to me about history and things and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Just for being a mentor. So that's what you were. Ironically, this is another conversation, but I get into investments and stuff. And I remember you being the first person to talk with me about even stocks and stuff like that. And, just all the stuff you poured into me and just being also now your friend now, you were a friend then, but you're a friend now. And just thank you for your contribution to my life.